When Johnny comes marching home again, hurrah, hurrah, we'll give him a hearty welcome then, hurrah, hurrah. The men will cheer and the boys will shout, the ladies they will all turn out, and we'll all feel gay when Johnny comes marching home. He hasn't an arm, he hasn't a leg, hurroo, hurroo. He hasn't an arm, he hasn't a leg, hurroo, hurroo. He hasn't an arm, he hasn't a leg, the enemy nearly slew him. So low in flesh, so high in bone, our Johnny has come home. I have no memory of ever thinking Dad looked deformed. He was just Dad. To me, what is strange are those pictures of him when he was young. Like the basketball picture from his high school yearbook, there he is, standing tall, poised, ready to shoot, both arms extended and equal length. You see, the man I knew did not have matching arms. His right arm was 3 inches shorter. There was no elbow. It was permanently bent. The hand was brown and tan, yet the arm itself was pasty white in color, soft, no muscle tone, cold to the touch, and covered with a roadmap of scars from multiple surgeries. I have lots of memories of watching Dad get ready in the morning, from being a small child looking up Dad wearing dark trousers, a white crew neck t-shirt, short-sleeved. He'd put a white cotton knit tube over that right arm and then slip the arm into the open-topped, hard protective cuff he always wore. He'd put the tongue in place, and then using his left hand, he would weave those laces back and forth, both at the same time, hooking them on the prongs, securing the tongue in place like lacing up a boot. And then using his left hand and his teeth, he would flip those laces around and tie a perfect bow. All of that took less than 10 seconds. He'd put on a dress shirt, short sleeve. He'd button and tuck it in with his left hand. He would whistle as he put the tie around his neck, and again, using only his left hand, flip the ends around, tying a perfect Windsor knot. He would put on a sport coat, pick up his large leather school satchel, and head up the road to walk the block and 2 houses up the hill to the high school. It was common knowledge in my family that Dad lost his elbow in World War II due to shrapnel. And because of this, well, he just did things differently, that's all. It was not until I was much older that I learned the story. With guns and drums and drums and guns, hurroo, hurroo. With guns and drums and drums and guns, hurroo, hurroo. With guns and drums and drums and guns, our whole world changed in 41 as the lads answered country's call and Johnny marched from home. Jean Clarence Schutz graduated June 1941, Lincoln High School, Park Falls, Wisconsin, a small town 50 miles south of Lake Superior. He did a vocational course and got a job as a machinist, earning money so he could take classes at Marquette University in Milwaukee. In November 1942, he enlisted in the United States Army as a paratroop infantry regular. He spent 3 months in basic training, 11 months at Princeton University studying engineering, and 15 months in the European theater with the 17th Airborne Division. He was a scout for an intelligence and reconnaissance platoon, leading combat and reconnaissance patrols into enemy territory to secure information and disrupt enemy organization. He had 13 jumps to his record, and the waiting never got easy, especially if the jump was at night. The men sat in the cold belly of the plane, backs to the thin aluminum fuselage. The noise of the prop engines made it impossible to talk, so each man sat in the dark alone with his thoughts and the occasional glow of a cigarette. And they waited. They waited for the red light to come on. 5 seconds to drop. Ready. Stand. Turn. The blast of frigid wind. Red light turns to green. Go, 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 go. They jump in quick succession, falling into the abyss. It was on March 31st, 1945, after the jump over the Rhine, that his unit came under artillery fire. The shrapnel and explosions ripping his right arm to shreds. He was lucky in that he was actually taken by jeep to a medic evac station where the arm was tagged for amputation. When he reached a hospital setting, medical personnel again went among the wounded, bagging and tagging belongings. As they approached, he reached under his cot. He grabbed his boots. He clutched those boots to his body using that wounded arm, and he said with determination, "You are not taking my jump boots." And he wouldn't let go. A doctor was called over, who, as it turned out, was an orthopedic surgeon. That doctor took one look at the ability to grasp, and he said, "Can you squeeze my hand?" And when he did, that doctor said, "You can do that. There's enough nerve and muscle to save the arm." And the amputation tag was removed. With a crippled arm, a crippled leg, hurroo, hurroo. With a crippled arm, a crippled leg, hurroo, hurroo. With a crippled arm, a crippled leg, you're an eyeless, boneless, chickenless egg, and you have to be put with a bull to beg when Johnny comes marching home. For the next 2 years, his home was one VA hospital after another. England, New York, Colorado, Michigan. His battles continued as he struggled with post-operative depression, fighting those skirmishes again and again. At the age of 22, he had to decide how he wanted his arm for the rest of his life. You see, in those days, there was no such thing as joint replacement, and there were only 2 options, fused or not. A fused arm meant the bones of the lower arm would be permanently grafted to those of the upper, locking that arm either straight or bent. Not fused meant there would be a gap where the elbow used to be, and the only thing holding that arm together would be skin and a bit of sinew. Now, always a people person and loving research, he began to collect data to make this decision. Going through the orthopedic wards, he talked to the other men, he listened to their stories, he asked questions. And at last he met Charlie. Now, Charlie had no elbow and his arm was not fused. So the question is, what's that like? Well, says Charlie, the arm's pretty much useless, just flops like a dead fish. And he swung that arm thunk up onto the table. And then he said, but you know, it's really good for getting free drinks. Because I can do this. And he proceeded to take hold of that hand and twist 360 degrees around, fold the whole thing in half, backwards twisted in a very unnatural manner, putting the back of the hand on the back of the shoulder. Whew! Decision made, that arm was getting fused. More surgery, as bone from the left leg was taken to forever lock that arm in a bent position. Now, because there were exposed nerves just under the surface, any bump to that arm would send him through the ceiling. It was like having a funny bone that went from shoulder to wrist. So a hard removable cuff was designed. That first one was made of stiffened leather, like the armor of old. Now, being completely right-handed, it was with physical and occupational therapy, he transferred all his abilities into his left hand. He not only retrained his body, he rewired his brain. By the time he mustered out in June 1947, he could do anything with that left hand he ever did with his right, and he could do it just as well. But even with all the therapy, he was still considered 80% disabled. And because he had access to the GI Bill, he went to college. He studied chemistry, mathematics, physics. He was at the top of his class. His dream job of being a research chemist was within his grasp. Until the interviews. Every employer stated flatly, it was company policy not to hire anyone with a disability greater than 40%. Shot down in another skirmish with depression. The old church clock will peal with joy, hurrah, hurrah, to welcome home our darling boy, hurrah, hurrah. The village lads and lasses say, with roses they will strew the way, and we'll all feel gay when Johnny comes marching home. It was Mom who saw in Dad his natural ability to teach. There was always somebody sitting with him at their kitchen table as he was explaining the latest lecture to a fellow student. Why don't you go into teaching, Gene? In his senior year, he changed his major, so in June 1951, he graduated with a triple major: chemistry, mathematics, education, with a minor in physics. For the next 42 years, he taught high school. He taught not only the college-bound, but the wood and metal shop guys too, because he taught science from the perspective of the real world. You're out in a boat, you're in a channel, you want to know how deep the water is, what do? You look at those waves, right? Wave height, wave motion, that is physics. You want to play pool or bowl well? Learn physics. You want to drive, maneuver, and stop a loaded pickup truck? Oh, you had better understand physics. Over those 42 years, he taught 3 generations, came in contact with thousands of students, and not one of them ever saw him as having a disability. He was simply Mr. Sheets. Where are your eyes that used to smile? Hurroo, hurroo. Tell me, where are your eyes that used to smile? Hurroo, hurroo. With aching back and weary bone, these battles you still fight alone, for there's no rest for you when Johnny comes marching home. The years took their toll. He lived with a constant tingling sensation in that right arm, yet parts of the hand were numb. Worn down from supporting an atrophied limb, the back and shoulder muscles deteriorated further. Now, it is true that as other aspects of his physical being changed, the arm became less of a focal point. He was bald by 30. Also by 30, all his upper teeth had been pulled and replaced by dentures. Over the years, there was the hearing loss, knee replacement, diabetes, and he would continue to struggle with post-operative depression, just 1 week shy of 55 years to the day. He ceased in his sleep. 911 was called. The EMTs who came were former students. He was taken to the local hospital where he was pronounced dead. Seeing him on the gurney, alone in that silent room, he looked so old and wizened. Not wearing his glasses. His upper lip was rolled into his mouth. The EMTs had removed the dentures. As cold as that arm had for so many years. Get ready for the Jubilee, hurrah, hurrah. We'll give the hero 3 times 3, hurrah, hurrah. The laurel wreath is ready now to place upon his loyal brow, and we'll all feel gay when Johnny comes marching home. The next time I saw him, he was freshly shaven and laid out in his Easter suit. The paratrooper wings which he always wore were on his lapel. On his left hand, his wedding ring and a rosary wrapped around his right. Over the next 2.5 days, more than 400 people would come to pay their respects and express condolences. Teachers, former students, members of the community. His obituary made the front page of the local paper. One of the men who spoke with me had been a student in one of those very first classes. This man's face and hands told of a life of hard work out of doors. And he simply said, "Your dad was the first person to ever see anything in me." At the cemetery, 2 uniformed army soldiers folded that flag with crisp precision. They knelt to be eye level with Mom. And they said, as they handed it to her, "On behalf of a grateful nation and the United States Army, this flag is a token of appreciation for your loved one's honorable and faithful service. Let love and friendship on that day, hurrah, hurrah, their choicest pleasures to display, hurrah, hurrah, and let each one perform some part to fill with joy the warrior's heart, and we'll all feel gay when Johnny comes marching home."